right, welcome to Dumpster Times number 19, post-election edition. We are so happy here in Ohio. Oh, hi. Oh, we did it. Yay. But let's not stay happy for more than 2 seconds, because you know what those Republicans are up to, don't you? They've already started plotting and planning. Big Daddy Mike DeWine has announced that, well, we have to protect the children, so we're going to add some things to the recreational marijuana bill that weren't put in there so that children will be protected. Come on. He just wants to control things. And he will. And probably part of what he wants to control are the profits coming in because of the recreational marijuana. You see, a lot of Ohioans were fleeing up to Michigan or just simply traveling for the weekend to get their pot because it's legal there and it's cheaper. So we are hoping here in Ohio, we hope that prices will come down, but quality should remain. And I'm willing to pay for good quality, knowing that there's no chemicals or toxins in the pot. This is from the Nextdoor app, believe it or not, which has become quite the center of political discussion over the past few months. When I first got on the Nextdoor app, it was more about my cat is missing, or my neighbor is loud and unruly, or children are throwing things at the house, that kind of thing. Nextdoor, that's what's happening next door. And when I joined, people were adamant that it was not a place for talking politics. But that has changed with the state constitutional amendments, at least in Ohio, at least in my neighborhood next door. So this was posted November 9th, which is 2 days after the election in Ohio. Columbus, Ohio. Ohio legislators will be introducing several bills to address this issue in the coming weeks. And the issue is Deceptive Ohio Issue 1, misled the public, but doesn't repeal our laws. Foreign billionaires don't get to make Ohio laws. It's funny how they're stealing rhetoric from the left to make a point to righties. Foreign billionaires. Foreign billionaires were pushing money on either side because that's what billionaires do. As long as we allow billionaires to exist, they're going to do this. And we better start thinking how we can chop them down into reasonable millionaires, I guess. But let's get back to this article. Columbus, Ohio. Ohio legislators will be introducing several bills to address this issue in the coming weeks. Foreign billionaires don't get to make Ohio laws, said Jennifer Gross, Republican Westchester, pointing to millions from billionaires outside America that helped fund Issue 1. Gross added, "This is foreign election interference and it will not stand." Issue 1 doesn't repeal a single Ohio law. In fact, it doesn't even mention one, said Representative Bill Dean, Republican from Xenia. The amendment's language is dangerously vague and unconstrained and can be weaponized to attack parental rights or defend rapists, pedophiles, and human traffickers. The boogeymen that we must bring up now whenever we feel that we are threatened. Melanie Miller, Republican Ashland, said, "We will continue to be a voice for every child in their mother's womb who cannot speak for themselves." Representative Beth Lear, Republican Galena, stated, "No amendment can overturn the God-given rights with which we were born." To prevent mischief by pro-abortion courts with Issue 1, Ohio legislators will consider removing jurisdiction from the judiciary over this ambiguous ballot initiative. The Ohio legislature alone will consider what, if any, modifications to make to existing laws based on public hearings and input from legal experts on both sides. Sounds like they're ready to interfere in the people's will. What will the people do? Interestingly enough, the responses on Nextdoor are just like crazy. It's disgusting. They're going to try and ignore the will of the people. They should be persecuted. Kevin, persecuted? No. Prosecuted? Maybe. Agreed. They didn't like how the vote came out. Too bad. It's time to sweep them out of office. Come on, it's our state constitution. It only got there with both Republicans and Democrats and independents voting for it. They have no authority to go against the vote of the people. They're counting on us letting this blow over and forgetting about it, just like we did about funding public schools. They've ignored that for close to 20 years. So, wow, lots of turmoil in the Nextdoor app, people responding to what the Republicans are going to do. But what we have to do is support the work of a group of citizens who put together a new constitutional amendment that will be on the ballot next year that will set up a way, a nonpartisan way of creating new districts every 10 years after the census is taken. So that's our next goal. But every time we do this, we have to be on the lookout for people who are ready to come in and throw a spanner in the works somehow. And these people who are running the state are a prime example. So yes, we have to do that. We also have to come to grips with the fact that these Republicans are elected overwhelmingly time and time again. The candidates for major leadership roles in Ohio over the past decade or two have not been the strongest from either party. I have to report here that in the year 2022, you remember that? That was last year. Mike DeWine was re-elected by a resounding 22% over his Democratic opponent, Nan Whaley, who sounded like a wonderful person. I voted for her, but she had never been given any exposure or support by the Democratic Party in Ohio. It was suddenly, here's this woman, she's mayor, she's good, but they never built her resume. They never worked with her to get her to that point where she could take on a Mike DeWine. It's disgusting what happens here in Ohio, and we've got to do something about it. We need some major, young, invigorated, Democratic progressives to step in. In Ohio, the Progressive Party has been crushed under the heel of the Democrats, the regular Democrats. All my friends that I met in the Bernie campaign in Ohio and Akron and Northeastern Ohio, where are all those people now? What are they doing? I don't know. Maybe I'll find out. Maybe I'll ask a few. Hey, what are you guys doing? What can you do? There's got to be something to do. That's the thing. Because if you just sit around and do nothing, well, Mike DeWine's going to be awfully happy about that. I came across this article and it gave me pause. And I thought a lot about what it implies. So I want to share it with you and discuss it. The phone doesn't stop. Overwhelming demands for a ceasefire catch Democrats off guard. Congressional staff say the mood inside the Capitol is tense, stifling, and bewildering as members brush off their constituents' outrage. And this is November 9th. From the HuffPost. Ceasefire now, choose peace, choose humanity, choose love. Picture is of Representatives Cori Bush and Rashida Tlaib holding a banner demanding a ceasefire and condemning the Israeli attacks on Gaza in front of the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. on November 8th. An end to the bloodshed in the Israeli-Hamas conflict seems more remote than ever on Thursday, when President Joe Biden answered a question about the chances of a ceasefire by saying, none, no possibility. But as Biden refuses to use his leverage over the U.S.'s Israeli allies, voters and constituents across the country are overwhelming members of his party with demands to stop the violence, which has claimed more than 11,000 lives in the past month. Staffers from more than 24 Democratic offices say they are receiving an unprecedented number of calls and emails demanding for members to support a ceasefire, an onslaught for which their caucus was totally unprepared. How out of touch are they? They are out of touch. Following the October 7th terror attacks on Israeli by Hamas militants, up to 3 weeks passed and the death toll from Israelis' retaliatory strikes reached the thousands before many offices even formulated an official response. Let it go to voicemail, was the prevailing guidance in several offices, one staffer said. The yawning mismatch between voters and members' sentiments on this issue strikes many staffers as outrageous. This building is not listening, said one Democratic aide. I've never seen such a disconnect between where voters and constituents are and where Congress is. And that's saying something because there's always a disconnect. The deluge of calls is producing mixed results. Some members have called for a humanitarian pause as a direct result of the pressure, several staffers said. The Biden administration, which is also feeling the pressure, announced Thursday that Israel had agreed to limited daily pauses in the fighting to allow civilians to leave with few further details available. It's cold comfort. But even if members are not speaking up for a ceasefire, the calls and the letters are making a difference, said one staffer. They're changing the calculations of how far some members are willing to go to support Israel. But many more members remain unmoved. Only 18 House Democrats have signed the ceasefire resolution introduced by Representative Cori Bush. Another handful have caused for a ceasefire independently. On Monday, roughly 50 Democrats issued a less defined call for a humanitarian pause of limited space and time. What? Is that some kind of Star Trek episode? A humanitarian pause of limited space and time while we beam you up from the conflict, patch you up, and then send you back. But that demand was buried deep in a letter aimed at condemning the use of the phrase, from the river to the sea. We cannot speak this phrase. It is a coded language, and it means that you are inherently against the Jewish people if you use that phrase, is my understanding. I don't know. It's ridiculous. Why? Once again, I will ask this rhetorical question. Why are all these religions put in one little tiny spot that is called Holy Land that they all think is their Holy Land? It's crazy. 22 House Democrats joined Republicans in despicably censuring Representative Rashida Tlaib, the only Palestinian American member of Congress, for using the phrase. For using a phrase. And the House and Senate are laboring to pass roughly $14 billion in additional military aid to Israel in the coming weeks. This is the most I've ever seen people unified behind an issue and actively calling. Their office is one of many where staffers say calls for a ceasefire outnumber support for aid to Israel many times over. This is very unprecedented, the staffer said. The phone doesn't stop ringing at any point in the day. Keep it up, folks. Keep calling them. Keep writing them. All the staff who spoke for this story requested anonymity out of fear of retaliation. Most work for Democrats, which tracks with the recent Data for Progress poll, finding that 80% of Democratic voters support a ceasefire. 80%! But we are too dumb We don't understand the nature of this critical balance of war in the Middle East and all of the things that connect from the petroleum underneath the sands to the Arabian populations surrounding the area and the historic backgrounds of these incredible religions, all there, all wanting to worship the holy shoe. Oh no, that was Monty Python. At any rate, I did not call them. I don't like calling them because I'm afraid I'll just become unhinged if I'm doing a rant on the phone. So I typed them. I typed to them. I typed to Senator Sherrod Brown, and I say Sherrod Brown for all those people out there who call him Sherrod. It's Sherrod Brown. And I did one for good old Mr. Vance, our new senator. And I will keep sending him little missives because I know he doesn't read them and he doesn't care less for me. And then I have a new representative in Congress, Amelia Sykes. So I'm writing her too. And I will keep writing, and I encourage you to keep writing. Here's the thing. It's not set up for seeking peaceful solutions. The way the politicians think is not set up for peace. It's set up to continue arms sales to other entities who then use them and need more. And so it goes, and so it goes. The only way we can stop all of this is to bust up the military-industrial complex and use all of that, all of the resources that go into that, into fighting climate change. Because you know that these weapons of mass destruction are not helping the climate problem one bit, are they? They're making it far worse. And the attitude behind these weapons, that it's just brute force that's going to bring us victory in the end, but it doesn't, because victory for the military-industrial complex is not goal-oriented with one specific thing, peace. No. It's continuing the conflict so that more weapons can be designed and built and created. That's what it is. And someone you know and love probably works for one of those companies. We got to start talking to them. What if your company was more involved in geothermal heating solutions than in creating gravity bombs? Tune into your Nextdoor app. Start chatting with people there. Start talking about solutions, because just complaints ain't going to happen. Because just complaining isn't going to bring anything real. I mean, I'm so happy with the victories that we had in Ohio last week, but I know that there's so much more work we're going to have to do. All right. This building is not listening. I've never seen such a disconnect between where voters and constituents are and where Congress is. A Democratic aide speaking to HuffPost. The party's hapless response has left staffers horrified and deeply demoralized. Many whose daily job is to speak with constituents said senior staff are handing out talking points that minimize the carnage in Gaza, or that seem designed to confuse callers about where the representative stands. All his statements are so vague and full of inaccessible jargon that we don't know what his true stance is, one staffer said of the lawmaker they work for. In one congresswoman's office, staff said they're being told to claim she supports a humanitarian pause, even though she has never said so in public. Another office is sending out automated responses that state the death toll in Gaza is 3,000. That estimate is more than 3 weeks out of date and thousands shy of the real figures. On Monday, Gaza's health ministry estimated the Israeli airstrike has killed more than 10,000 people, 4,000 of them children. Another staffer said it did not occur to her superiors that some constituents would have personal ties to Gaza, which she realized when a caller said the bombardment had just killed most of his friend's family. The statement we're authorized to use doesn't contain any sympathy, the staffer said. It isn't part of any statement to say, I'm so sorry that happened to you. She went off script to tell the caller she was sorry. An astounding number of callers say they are committed to never voting for their member again unless they support a ceasefire, several staffers said. Some constituents even promised to go further and mobilize friends and neighbors to vote against them. But some members seemed equally fervent in believing this will blow over. Oh, they weren't going to vote for me anyway, one lawmaker said breezily when a staff member told him about voters' threats to stop supporting him, according to the staffer. After an aide in another office gave their member a similar warning, a superior pulled them aside and admonished them for bringing it to the member's attention. Members and senior aides in other offices are telling staff that what seems like a stampede is actually a small group of people calling repeatedly. Many letters are part of a targeted campaign, but by no means are those campaigns small. Yasmin Taib, the legislative and political director for Empower Change, a grassroots Muslim advocacy group that is lobbying for members to join Bush's ceasefire resolution, said that as of Friday morning, there had been more than 380,000 letters sent to the House alone. Some aides working for lawmakers opposed to a ceasefire say their superiors have warned them outright not to contradict their bosses on social media. There is a real feeling of being complicit, a congressional staff member. Yeah. The aide of a member known for taking principled, unpopular votes and who usually invites frank debates among staff said this member is uncharacteristically quiet on the conflict and that he cloisters with just a few top advisors. The disconnect between the silence this imposes and the outrage of constituents and of staffers like herself is uncanny. We're being asked to pretend that every day is a normal day in this office, the aide said. Meanwhile, anyone who answers the phones can see the anger is not letting up. The phone rings every 5 minutes, said one staffer for a lawmaker who believes the outrage is starting to die down. The callers are growing more diverse in age, identity, and party affiliation. The pressure is going to continue to mount, and these members are going to have to figure out how to reposture themselves because their positions are not sustainable. Every day, this conflict looks more grotesque, more visibly catastrophic. Countless staff members share constituents' sense of horror. There's a real feeling of being complicit, one said. We, that is Congress, are being instrumental in the ability of Israel to wipe Palestine off the face of the earth. Frightened of venting their outrage in public, many are fuming anonymously in venues like Instagram's Dear White staffers. In the midst of all the uproar, the office is calm, as if everyone is walking on eggshells, when there are literal war crimes happening with the help of the U.S. government, one contributor wrote. On Wednesday, in an unusual rebuke of their members, more than 100 staffers staged a walkout for a ceasefire on the steps of the House of Representatives. But inside the building, the word ceasefire has been distorted into a third rail, one Democratic aide said. Many lawmakers fear that calling for a ceasefire will draw the wrath of the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, otherwise known as AIPAC, a pro-Israel lobbyist group and a formidable foe to any member who opposes military aid to Israel. During last year's midterms, AIPAC raised more money for Democrats than any other interest group. At the same time, it poured $4 million into an effort to unseat Representative Andy Levin, Democrat Michigan, a self-declared Zionist, because he opposed the demolition of Palestinian homes in the West Bank. It worked. Levin lost his primary. Members see members who step out of line lose their elections. And that's what defeated Nina Turner, too. AIPAC jumped in on the side of Shontel Brown. Such a shame. Well, folks, we have to keep up the pressure and start talking about things that those long-term politicians have never talked about. Things like, how do we achieve peace? How do we learn to live with our neighbors? We can do it on the Nextdoor app, but we can't do it in Palestine. That's all I got for you this week. See you next week as we celebrate 20 issues of the new Dumpster Times online edition. See ya.